Good afternoon, and thanks for joining today's session, Powering Blue Light, Procurement and Sustainable Solutions. My name's Sam Taylor from Smarta Energy, and I work closely with public sector clients across the UK, particularly in the fire, police and ambulance services. Now, this session isn't your typical webinar. We're not here to pitch anything. Instead, think of this as a consultation, a chance to arm you with useful insights, frameworks, and case-based learning to help you make better decisions about your estate, your energy strategies, and your compliance pathways. Now, we all know the challenges. There's rising costs, pressure to decarbonise, limited capex, and a tightening policy environment. But the opportunities, well, they're real. And today we're going to unpack them together in a grounded, sector-specific way that respects your operational context. Okay, so here's what we're going to cover in the next 25 to 30 minutes. Firstly, we'll look at current energy market conditions and how global and domestic volatility can affect your blue light estates. We're going to dive into the Procurement Act and look at some of the key changes you need to understand if you're involved in energy contracts or framework use. We're going to look at some efficiency measures, budget sensitive steps for reducing energy consumption and operational carbon. Then we're going to have a step-by-step solar installation journey. We're going to use a realistic fire station walkthrough. After we've gone through those steps, we'll look at how to fund that operation, so funding and compliance on what's available right now and how to unlock it with some rather recent big changes. We'll look at our role, not as a supplier, but as a support partner. And finally, we'll close with some practical next steps and your live Q&A. Now, just before we get into the content, a quick word on who we are. Smarta Energy is an independent consultancy focused on helping public sector and critical estates manage energy smarter through a combination of procurement strategy, efficiency planning and on-site generation. Now, our work spans across NHS Trusts, councils, housing associations and increasingly emergency services. Now, alongside that, we also have Smarta Water, which is our dedicated arm for utility procurement and water efficiency. Now, that operates under its own license as a national water retailer, which gives us the flexibility to help multi-site estates improve both cost control and environmental performance all in one place. Together, we're able to support clients in looking at their estate holistically across electricity, gas and water. So you're not chasing savings in silos and your operational strategy joins up where it matters most. Importantly, everything we do is built around public sector compliance, transparency and long-term value. Let's start by looking at the bigger picture, the energy market itself, and what's currently shaping that landscape. As you can see from the price trend for winter 2025, we're currently seeing some of the highest gas and electricity costs in recent months. This volatility, easy for me to say, isn't random. It's being driven by a mix of geopolitical and environmental pressures. For example, there's rising tension around the Strait of Hormuz, through which a fifth of the world's oil and gas moves. Now, if that gets disrupted, markets, as you know, react fast. There's been a heat wave in northwest Europe, and that's putting strain on French nuclear output because higher river temperature reduced cooling efficiency at power stations. And then closer to home, the UK's growing renewable capacity is slowly reducing reliance on gas-fired generation, which helps, but isn't enough to stabilise prices on its own. The takeaway here is that underlying market risks have not gone away. If anything, they're evolved. Volatility is becoming a feature, not a blip. But there is a silver lining. As prices rise, it becomes more attractive for traders to inject gas into UK storage, which strengthens our winter supply security and can help ease pressures later down the line. So in short, yeah, the market's really volatile, but understanding why helps you make better procurement and planning decisions. And that's exactly what we're going to move into next. Okay, so let's talk strategically, specifically what type of energy contract makes sense in a market like this. Now, there's often a temptation to default to a fixed contract, and that's completely understandable. Fixed contracts provide you price certainty. You lock in a rate and you don't have to think about it for 12 to 24 months. It's simple, it's safe, it's hands off. But the trade-off is that you may end up locking in at a high point in the market, especially if you don't have the flexibility to time it right. Now, on the other hand, flexible contracts let you buy in tranches, often over a 12 to 36 month window, giving you the opportunity to react to certain market conditions. Now, done well, this approach can generate meaningful savings, but it does require more engagement. It's better suited to organisations that can work with advisors or frameworks that actively manage those trades on your behalf. And then there's contract length to think about. Now, here the rule of thumb is the longer you go, the more you can spread risk and access the lower pricing further into the curve. Now, you can see here from the forward curve graph that prices for energy in 27 and 28 are significantly lower than the near-term contracts. Now, that means for multi-year deals, if structured well, can offer real long-term value. So the question isn't fixed or flexible, but what's the right balance for your estate, your appetite for risk, and your internal processes? And that's something we help clients evaluate based on their specific context. Okay, so the Procurement Act 2023 is one of the most significant overhauls in decades. If you work in estates, procurement, or hold financial authority, this directly affects how you engage suppliers and manage energy contracts. Three critical changes to highlight on here, okay? Transparency obligations. So every award decision, especially your framework, must be justifiable, documented, and demonstrably fair. Now, this means clear scoring matrices, audit-ready records, and full conflict of interest declarations. There's greater flexibility, so the Act supports use of direct awards or open tenders, especially when you can justify a most economically advantaged tender meet. That's a real opportunity to explore solutions tailored to blue light operations without being boxed in by framework limitations. There's also supplier engagement rules. Now, the rules now encourage earlier dialogue, market testing, and even pre-market engagement sessions. It's a big shift and one that allows you to co-design scopes with providers before going formal. We worked recently with a fire and rescue service in the Midlands who used these flexibilities to procure a combined solar and EV charging solution outside the typical framework based on that MEET criteria that prioritised readiness, carbon return on investment, and ongoing maintenance. Now, that whole process took around 6 weeks end to end, fully compliant, and saved over 70,000 annually. So what can you do right now without waiting on major capex? Well, let's talk about efficiency wins that don't break the budget. Okay, so there's LED retrofits. These are quick, low disruption upgrades. A decent ambulance station we worked with swapped out legacy fittings and cut lighting energy by around 58% with under 18-month payback. It's great. Smart metering, and not just AMR, we're talking true sub-metering. So one police headquarters found two rarely used annex buildings that were still heating continuously due to a BMS misconfiguration. The fix cost £220 and the annual saving was over £4,000. And then finally, insulation and draft control. So for older fire stations and converted estate buildings, thermal loss is the silent budget killer. Simple door seals and pipe lagging saved a station in Scotland almost 9% on their winter heating costs. But there's more than those three. The stuff hiding in plain sight. Small tweaks, minimal disruptions, but big impact. Because in a blue light setting where shifts roll 24/7, legacy buildings are common and equipment's always on standby. Waste creeps in quietly. It's not obvious until you go looking for it. So we wanted to jot down 5 more practical, often overlooked opportunities that we've helped clients fix and with some great results. So the first one is ghost loads in IT and comms rooms. Redundant equipment and overcooling that silently drains thousands per year. A quick audit here will pay off fast. We've got domestic hot water temperatures, so slightly high set points across kitchens and showers that can be dropped by a few degrees within compliance and can cut energy by 10 to 15%. The override button creep, so temporary HVAC or lighting overrides left on for days. Again, we've seen some savings, some annual waste from this alone. Just by setting a reset routine. And then vehicle bay ventilation, extractor fans running 24/7 regardless of carbon levels, where you can swap to sensor-based control. One trust, for example, saved 9,000 a year from this alone. Shift-to-shift handover habits, again, so a bit of a behavioural change here, but embedding quick energy checks into your operation routine, which is cultural and not really costly, and can save 3 to 5% with zero capex. So these aren't specifically sexy upgrades, but they're not ribbon cutting projects or anything, but they're fast, measurable wins. And when you're under pressure to save money and carbon now, then this is where you'd start. And the key, you don't need to launch a full net zero strategy to act on this. You can start with a walk around, a smart meter install, or even a checklist. You'll probably be quite surprised with what turns up. Okay, right. Let's bring this to life with someone we'll call Brian. Now, Brian's not real, but if you work in estates or procurement for emergency services, you've either met a Brian or you are a Brian. Now, Brian's a practical guy, been in the service a while. He doesn't get excited about buzzwords like net zero or decarbonisation pathways, but he does get excited about two things: budgets at balance and not having to deal with complaints from the chief when there's scaffolding on the roof during a call out. Now, Brian's first question when we met him was, is this going to cause me a headache? Fair enough. So together we walked through a project roadmap built around his priorities: operational continuity, clear numbers for the finance team, and absolute zero tolerance for surprises halfway through the install. So on the next few slides, what we're going to do is walk through Brian's journey from idea to installation and show you just how smooth it can be when everything's done right. Okay, before we dive into Brian's solar journey, let me make something really clear. What you're about to see over these next few slides isn't a smarter sales funnel, okay? It's not, look at what we can do for you. It's a framework, a clear, methodical way of approaching on-site energy projects that any competent advisor, energy consultant, or procurement partner should be able to deliver. Now, at Smarta, this is the process that we use because it's built around three things: minimizing operational disruption, building confidence with decision makers, and making compliance easy at every step. The reality is that this model works whether you're working with us or someone else. And the value is having a structure that you can trust and that lets you control the timeline, control the risk, and bring others along with you internally. So think of the next 5 or 6 slides as a walkthrough guide, okay? You could hand this to a delivery partner or use it as a checklist internally. It's about showing what good looks like and avoiding common pain points that we've seen in public sector projects that weren't quite as smooth. All right, let's get into it. So here's how Brian's journey begins with that very first step, and that's feasibility and site assessment. Like all good projects, it starts with a question: is this doable? And at this stage, it's about fact finding. We or any decent consultant will gather energy data, conduct a physical site visit, and assess things like roof orientation and shading, structural capacity, and whether the distribution network operator, the DNO, has capacity locally to accept generation. Now, this is where you want answers, not excitement. Now, a good feasibility phase should give you a binary recommendation, which is either yes, this is viable and worth progressing, or no, it's not, and here's why. Now, that kind of clarity is priceless, because if it's a no, then you've saved time, risk, and potentially years of internal wrangling, right? If it's a yes, well, you've now got evidence and not just enthusiasm to take forward. Okay, so once feasibility is confirmed, it's about building the business case. And this is where many projects stall if they're not handled properly. For Brian, this meant answering 2 key questions. What are the numbers, the savings, the payback, the carbon? How do we fund it without draining capital budgets? And at this stage, you'd work with your advisor to model a cost-benefit analysis, ideally tailored to your board's language, including things like life cycle savings, risk, and alignment with your sustainability strategy. You'll also explore funding options, which could include the Renewable Rewards Funds, which helps avoid capex blocks, SALEX funding if eligible, or even partial internal capital matched with external support. Crucially, this stage should leave you with a board-ready pack, something that our Brian could take to his CFO or leadership team and say, here's the rationale, here's the benefit, here's how we pay for it. So no jargon, no guesswork, just confidence. Now, with that we've got internal sign-off. That's secured. The next challenge is often procurement. And this is where the Procurement Act 2023 plays a key role, because it gives more flexibility than many assume. You're not tied into a single framework or rigid route. What matters is transparency, fairness, and demonstrating value. Now, for Brian, we helped map the best fit route. In his case, a direct award justified under the MEET principles, which we mentioned earlier, which is the most economically advantageous tender. But this could be just as easily as a mini competition or a DPS call-off. At this point, any good partner should help you define the technical spec clearly, building KPIs, service levels, and long-term warranties, and make sure that maintenance is embedded into the contract and not bolted on later. Now, the outcome, Brian knew exactly who was delivering, what they were delivering, and how performance would be tracked. No grey areas, just a clean, compliant partnership in place. Okay, so once procurement's done, we move into the technical design and planning phase. So this is where architects, engineers, and sometimes the local authority will get involved. So communication in this bit, key. Brian's role here was mostly coordination, ensuring that he had the right contacts internally and staying updated. Meanwhile, our role, or any good partner's role, was to help finalise the system design, submit grid applications and planning permissions where required, and identify any risks or access issues before the boots hit the roof. By the end of this phase, everything should be ready for install, not just technically, but logistically and politically as well, which means there's no last minute blockers, no hidden costs, and no, oh, we didn't think of that surprises. Okay, and then on to the most visible part, which is the actual install. Now, for Brian and for most emergency services, this phase is often the most stressful. The number one question is always, will this disrupt operations? And the answer has got to be a firm no, if it's planned correctly. Good installation planning means scheduling work around key operational windows, clear safety briefings to all the staff on site, and daily updates so that there's no surprises. In Brian's case, install happened over 2 weeks, with teams working early morning and weekends. This site remained 100% operational. By the end, there's a commissioning pack, a commissioning report, handover pack, and access to a live dashboard showing generation in real time. From Brian's side, minimal hassle. From the station side, lower bills and a visible commitment to sustainability. Okay, so once everything is installed and generating, the journey doesn't end. A key part of long-term success is visibility, not just on performance, but on how that performance supports wider goals, cost reduction, carbon reporting, compliance. For Brian, we set up automated dashboards and quarterly reports, but again, whether it's Smarta or another advisor, the goal should be the same. Real-time tracking of output, early warnings if performance drops, and structured maintenance support baked in from day one. This makes it easy for Brian to report savings to leadership, feed into net zero strategies, and demonstrate the return on investment with confidence. No chasing invoices, no wondering if the system's working, just clarity delivered continuously. Now, while Brian's journey shows what the process looks like in practice, none of it happens without the right funding in place. So let's have a look at what's available right now so that you can unlock it. Now, most importantly, some of you may have noticed that the Public Sector Decarbonisation Scheme, one of the headline grants for CapEx-funded energy projects, has recently closed, or at least paused for future projects. While on the surface this might feel like a bit of a roadblock, it actually creates a bit of space for a more tailored, agile funding strategy that often a better fit for emergency services in practice. Because, here's the truth. Many blue light organisations struggle to access the PSDS in the first place due to short bid windows, intense competition, and the requirement to have shovel-ready projects lined up months and months in advance. So the good news is there are other tools in the box. You've got things like the Renewable Rewards Fund, which can fully support solar and retrofit installs with no upfront spend and no loan obligations. You've got Local Capacity Support Fund, great for planning, design, or enabling works before committing to install. Salix funding is available for specific NHS or trust-linked bodies, and especially for multi-measure upgrades. And even internal capital hybrid models, where we help you build out phased rollouts to match existing budget cycles. So while PSDS has been a useful program, its absence now gives organisations like yours the freedom to build smarter, more realistic timelines, rather than racing to meet artificial grant deadlines. The opportunity now is to structure projects in a way that matches your operational needs, and we're here to help map that out for you. So let's take a moment to clarify where we fit into all of this, because by now you've seen the journey laid out from feasibility to long-term reporting. And I want to be as clear as possible. This isn't a pitch. The process we're describing, it should be deliverable by any competent, experienced advisor. Now, that said, the reason we've been invited into so many emergency services, the local authorities, NHS Trusts, public estates, is because We understand your specific context, and we believe that makes a world of difference. Now, at Smarta, we don't just sell energy. We work with public sector clients at three core levels. Strategic support, so helping you align energy decisions with estate planning, net zero targets, compliance objectives. Building business cases in your voice, so finance, estates, and ops are all on the same page. And providing benchmarking against peers, so you can identify where your trust, your brigade, or division stands. Secondly, technical delivery. So we handle all heavy lifting, feasibility, grid connections, planning, funding bids. We project manage delivery partners to make sure you get what's promised. No corner cutting, no scope drift. We're tech agnostic, which means that we choose what works for you and not what we're tied into. And third is a long-term partnership. Ongoing performance dashboards, fault alerts, and optimization support. Quarterly or annual carbon reporting that can lift straight into board papers. And importantly, our flexibility. We can work inside your existing procurement routes or help navigate alternatives. In short, Smarta are a trusted part of your in-house team. You'll always know where you stand and what's coming next. And that clarity is sometimes rare, and we work really hard to protect it. So let's talk next steps. We've covered a fair amount of ground today, and you've seen how the energy market is shifting, how the Procurement Act opens up new flexible ways to engage with the right solutions. And we've walked you through a real world example of what a solar installation could look like from start to finish. But knowledge alone doesn't move the dial, action does. So here's what you can do right now without any obligations, okay? Firstly, you can book a very quick benchmarking review. You can send us your latest utility data, and we'll return a free snapshot of how your estate compares against other similar public sector sites. No strings, just insight. You could request a funding readiness scan. So we'll assess your eligibility for renewable reward, SALIX, LCSF, and flag quick wins that could unlock external funding or internal savings. You could get a personalised first steps report. So if you're considering solar or LED upgrades, battery storage, or efficiency retrofits, we'll give a tailored 2-page roadmap that outlines costs, benefits, and next steps for your estate. Or, in all honesty, you could just book a conversation, because sometimes the most useful thing is simply asking questions with someone who isn't trying to sell you a package. Okay, good stuff. Now, while we've been presenting today, we've had some questions come through, so let's go through them. And if there are any more, then please let us know. First question is, what happens if my estate isn't suitable for solar? Is there still support available? Yeah, absolutely. Solar's not always the right fit. There's things like roof space orientation, shading, grid constraints, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're out of options. We can look at energy efficiency upgrades like building management system tuning, demand-led ventilation, lighting retrofits, all of which can still attract funding or deliver some meaningful savings. In some cases, ground-mounted solar or battery storage might be a better route than rooftop solar. The key, I think, in this is starting with a proper assessment, so you're not ruling anything out prematurely. All right. Next one is, we are locked into a procurement framework. Does that limit what we can do? Not necessarily. Look, frameworks provide a safe and compliant route, but under the new Procurement Act, there's more flexibility than ever. So you can still explore direct awards, mini competitions, and alternative routes. As long as they follow that meet the most economically advantaged tender principles and are properly documented, then you're good. And we work with clients on and off frameworks to find the right path. So it's not really a blocker. It's just something to navigate correctly. We've got one more. How long does a project like this actually take from conversion to commissioning? There were, on the slides, there were weeks. So there is a bit of a timeline there on some of these slides, which you can go back and have a look at. But typically, solar or energy retrofit, the project for feasibility may run for 4 to 6 weeks for feasibility and funding, another 4 to 6 weeks for procurement and design, and then installation itself, 4 to 8 weeks, depending on scale. So from that first chat to go live, you're looking probably around the 3 to 5 month as a realistic window. That said, we have helped speed up things when it's needed, especially when there's a tight budget window or internal deadline to meet. But case by case really. But yeah, 3 to 5 months is a good kind of like guide stick to go by. I don't think there's any more questions come through. Oh, this is strange. There's now two of me and my twin. All right, look, I just want to leave you with this. Okay, the blue light sector, sorry, is under huge pressure to decarbonise, to save, to comply, to modernise. But that pressure doesn't have to be overwhelming. With the right support, structure, and funding tools, you can build an energy strategy that works for you and not just the policy. Okay. Feel free to reach out and yeah, hopefully today's been of use. You found some value somewhere along the line. As we said, hopefully the solar walkthrough can be used as a bit of a hand-holding device. But as always, we're always here for a conversation. So from me up here and from me down here, I'll say goodbye. And yeah, thanks a lot for listening. Take care.